Some cars arrive at a track so obviously different that they become the subject of urban legend, like the story that Richard Petty drove a car in the 1968 Daytona 500 with a vinyl roof, which started to peel off during the race. The truth is, the roof was never vinyl at all, just paint. But behind the story is an even more interesting scientific approach, a car that tried to do things differently than any before, and it was one memorialized at the 2023 throwback race at Darlington. It was a car that seemingly tried to exploit the aerodynamics. Hours and hours are spent waxing cars so they'll cut through the air better. Whatever type of car it is, it should be smooth. But what if it wasn't? That's what the Pettys tried in 1968. Just 1 year earlier, Richard Petty had NASCAR's greatest year ever, winning 27 out of 49 Cup races, including a record 10 in a row. The Petty blue race car is iconic now, and was just as significant then. So when Richard's car appeared with a black roof at Daytona in February 1968, Ned Jarrett said it was almost as shocking as if the New York Yankees took the field wearing miniskirts. Beyond the odd color, the roof was actually textured. From a distance, it looked like a vinyl roof, a popular option for passenger cars in the late 60s. In reality, it was a textured paint. Soon, the biggest question in Daytona was, why the textured roof? Lee Petty first said that the roof was black so people would ask silly questions. He later said that all expensive cars had a vinyl roof, and they didn't want anyone to think Richard would drive something cheap. While it looked decorative to some, others thought it was trying to close the gap in performance between manufacturers. Petty's Plymouth Roadrunner was at a disadvantage to the new Fords and Mercurys, both in horsepower and aerodynamics. Ford engines were believed to make 600 horsepower, while the Plymouths had 50 less. And the Ford Torinos had a fastback roof, while the Roadrunners had a traditional rear window. The Ford roof directed air in a streamlined way that created a smaller area of low pressure behind the car, therefore creating less drag. Richard Petty finally said the textured paint was for aerodynamic reasons, saying, quote, "The paint is the same used on airliners and missiles." He further said, quote, "We think it breaks up wind currents a little. You want just a little, because too much would slow you down." To understand why that might be beneficial, we need to understand aerodynamic drag, which is divided into two categories, friction drag and pressure drag. Friction drag is when a rough surface slows an object as opposed to a smooth surface, which is why teams wax cars to get them smooth. Pressure drag is when the shape of an object slows it down by creating wakes of low pressure behind it, which is why when we think of aerodynamic objects, we think of streamlined ones like airplane wings and not boxes. In theory, Petty's roof could work on a principle similar to why a golf ball has dimples. A smooth ball would only travel half as far as one with dimples. Maybe a smooth roof was not the most efficient. As an object travels through air, the air sticks to it locally and creates something called a boundary layer between the surface and the surrounding air. At some point, the airflow separates from the object, and behind it is an area of low pressure. That low pressure creates drag that slows an object. As air hits a textured surface like a golf ball, it creates a turbulent boundary layer, which mixes with the surrounding air to retain kinetic energy. It encourages airflow to detach from the object later, which would create a smaller area of low pressure behind the object, therefore having less drag, and is why a dimpled golf ball travels twice as far as a smooth ball. So if a golf ball is better with dimples, would a textured roof improve a Plymouth Roadrunner? That's what the Pettys seemingly tried to answer. It would have more frictional drag, but might reduce the pressure drag. The roof would create a turbulent boundary layer, which would retain kinetic energy and encourage the airflow to better follow the roof line. It might have a slightly smaller area of low pressure behind the car to reduce drag and encourage more air to hit the rear spoiler, which would increase downforce. It could mean you would have a car with less drag and better handling. In fact, decades later, various testing has been done on similar principles. A 2009 episode of Mythbusters tested if a car with golf ball dimples would see improved fuel consumption, and found that theory to be possible. In 2020, Bugatti unveiled a hypercar that has raised dimples on the roof that would work on a similar principle and encourage air to follow the roof line. And airplane designers are currently researching ways to cover airplane surfaces with textured shark skin film to reduce drag. In 1968, Richard Petty spoke highly of how his car handled compared to others. The Fords will pull me by 3 or 4 car lengths on the straights, so I have to make it up somewhere. I get through the turns faster than they do. There are cars out here with 550 horsepower outrunning the ones with 600 horsepower. But the car didn't just look different, it sounded very different. The car made a strange whistling sound as it went around the track. Petty tried to explain the whistle on small holes in the rear spoiler, but others were skeptical and thought it was a side effect of the roof. "When I hear that whistle," said Richard, "I know I'm going fast enough." Despite being at a disadvantage to the Fords, Petty was the second fastest qualifier. With a speed of 189 miles per hour, he was 6 miles per hour faster than the next Chrysler product. While fast by itself, it was unclear how the Petty roof would perform under race conditions. 1968 happened to be the only time in Daytona 500 history that the qualifying races were completely rained out. They would have to enter the 500 without race practice. All week, the big story was the aerodynamic reasons for the textured roof. Was it really an improvement or just a distraction? In 1974, it was reported that the textured paint covered a sheet metal roof that had been dipped in acid, which left metal that was thinner and lighter than a legal roof. After the acid dipping, the metal became rough and needed to be hidden with textured paint. Although in recent years, it has been said that the roof was of normal thickness.
From the Daytona International Speedway, it's the 10th annual Daytona 500. And a record crowd of more than 90,000 fans are here in perfect weather for what looks like the fastest stock car race ever held. It certainly will be if the qualifying speeds are any indication, because we have an almost unbelievable 189.222 on the pole set by Cale Yarborough in a 68 Mercury Cyclone. Number 43 is Richard Petty on the outside of row 2 in a 68 Plymouth Roadrunner. And here they come, and Yarborough slides right down from his inside pole spot to take that lead around the first one. Richard Petty, however, drops back as Leroy moves right into number 2 spot, and Petty has dropped back into the slot at 3, and David Pearson's giving him quite a challenge for the number 3 position. There's Pearson, 17, and Petty on the outside of him. Petty challenging for the lead here. Petty, it seems, was the man to beat, and he had that mysterious black roof on his car that has caused so much speculation, wondering what it was with that dimpled effect on the roof, and it's caused a lot of talk during the hours of bull sessions in pit row all during the speed weeks. Here's Petty out in front. Look how close they're coming to that wall.
When the 500 began, Petty proved he was one of the fastest cars. He took the lead on lap 23, but his race fell apart 4 laps later.
Now, there's action up here on the turn. This is Hilton's car. A car right up against the wall. James Hilton, who finished 3rd here a year ago, apparently exploded a tire and is right up against the wall. The caution light is out, the flags are out, and there seems to be debris down on the track. And immediately the cars start to pit. Here's Petty's car in the pit area as Richard wants to pit under this yellow caution flag. So all the cars will be coming in here to try to get their tires and fuel, and for some reason or other, Petty is up on top of his car. Look at this furious activity in the pits. Andretti is in, Pearson's in, and Petty is definitely worried about the top. He's got a hammer, is hammering it away. Let's get a word quickly from Chris Economaki.
Bill, apparently a piece of debris from Hilton's car struck the roof just above the windshield and pulled it away from the windshield, and they're trying to fix it now.
Using duct tape, the roof was reattached to the windshield. Petty lost 2 laps making repairs and finished in 8th. When asked about the car in 2023, Richard explained the roof failure was due to a missed weld and not anything with a textured surface.
What happened, cut the inside and put the roll bar in there, but the board didn't weld the top back of the roll bar. Something flew up off the track and hit the windshield, and it happened to hit right in the middle, and that thing blew. That was a fast car too, buddy.
Was it still fast after that?
Oh yeah. And we kept borrowing tape, so we ran out of tape, and Leonard Wood and them, I think, was pitting next to us. And then when we got back out there, we got to running pretty fast. He wouldn't give us no more tape.
While the Daytona 500 didn't go well for the Pettys, 4 months later, NASCAR returned to Daytona for the Firecracker 400. Once again, Petty tried the textured paint. This time, it was colored white to reduce heat, and the rough paint extended beyond the roof and onto the fenders and hood. Petty was dismissive that the textured roof was significant enough to make any difference, saying, quote, "The rough surface won't make the car run any faster. We just wanted to be a little different. We thought maybe the white would be a little cooler." But now his car wasn't the only one with a textured surface. The Dodge Charger, owned by Cotton Owens and driven by Charlie Glotzbeck, also carried a black rubberized paint on the roof, which they said was designed to mimic vinyl roofs on street cars. While it was unclear if the roof had any effect, the two textured cars were fastest in qualifying, with Glotzbeck winning the pole and Petty in second. Richard responded by saying, quote, "I'm not so sure the rough paint might not help. Both the pole cars have it."
Here comes the start. And Petty has got him.
Petty led 5 laps early in the race, but blew an engine late. Glotzbeck finished 9th. Cale Yarborough in a Mercury completed the season sweep of Daytona. Petty left Plymouth to drive a Ford in 1969 and never again tried the rough paint. While the textured roof in theory could have worked, it's unclear if it had any impact on his speed. No team in NASCAR tried textured paint again, at least that we know of. As recent airplane testing sees reduced drag using textured film, it's likely that technology will eventually become a part of auto racing. Controlling the way air hits a surface can reduce drag if done correctly, just as the Pettys tried in 1968.
Four-car shootout to decide it all. Dale Earnhardt.
Here comes Doug Cope down on the inside.
Perhaps nobody gave this man a shot to be here. Victory lane.
Here's the checkered flag, and Derek Cope wins the Budweiser 500.
Derek Cope will win his first ever Busch Grand National race.
I believe Derek Cope's on a pretty good run right here. Let's see where he's going to. He's on the pole, guys.